It's Tuesday, March 31st. In the headlines, Project STAR and the Canadian High Commission launches school recovery program for hurricane-hit institutions in Westmoreland and St. James. Education Ministry says transformation plans remains on track. In business news, 5 financial institutions get liquidity support from central bank. Regionally, a Russian oil tanker arrives in Cuba, first shipment since January. And in sports, Reggae Boys embrace underdog role in high-stakes World Cup playoff against DR Congo. This is the news on PBC Jamaica. I'm Simone Absalom Gale. A school recovery program aimed at helping institutions hardest hit by Hurricane Melissa has been launched by Project STAR in partnership with the High Commission of Canada in Jamaica. This will target more than 600 students and staff across 3 schools in Westmoreland and St. James. These schools are Sir Clifford Campbell Primary in Savannah-Lamar, Westmoreland, Salt Spring Primary, and Hartfield Basic School, both in Salt Spring, St. James. In a statement on Monday, organizers explained that in total, the intervention directly supports 630 students, approximately 42 teachers, and members of staff. Director of Project STAR, Safri Brown, says the organization's existing presence in these communities enabled a swift and meaningful response following the hurricane. The Ministry of Education says Jamaica's ambitious education transformation program remains on track, even after disruptions caused by Hurricane Melissa. Permanent Secretary Dr. Cassandra Troop says the ministry continues to push ahead with sweeping reforms designed to strengthen human capital development and prepare students for the future. She was speaking at a quarterly update on the implementation of the Jamaica Education Transformation Commission's recommendations. We have more in this report.
The Ministry of Education, Skills, Youth and Information is reaffirming its commitment to overhauling the nation's education system. Speaking at the Ministry's quarterly briefing, Permanent Secretary Dr. Cassandra Troop emphasized the Ministry's responsibility for developing Jamaica's human capital and driving national progress.
We are responsible for the human capital development of this country. That is very, very important to keep the country running. And so we have an awesome responsibility. And that is why we have been given the task to transform education for national development. And our tagline is for a brighter tomorrow.
The transformation effort follows the 365 recommendations outlined in the Jamaica Education Transformation Commission's report. Dr. Troop says, despite challenges, including Hurricane Melissa, progress has continued.
We are very happy to tell Jamaica that even with the disruptions caused by the Hurricane Melissa, we have been able to stay on track. We are proud to let you know that we are not letting you down. And that's the reason why we are here this morning, to convince you with evidence that the work continues.
The ministry says the work is being closely monitored by the Education Transformation Oversight Committee, which meets regularly to review progress and provide support.
Let us welcome our very own Dr. Adrian Stokes. I must say, he takes this work very seriously. He meets with us every week just to have a conversation on how things are progressing. In addition, we go to the committee, the broader committee, on a quarterly basis to update them as well and for them to interrogate the processes and to provide support, insights, ideas, so we can move the work faster and more effectively.
Dr. Troop also stressed that the transformation progress is ultimately about students and ensuring they have the best opportunity to succeed.
What we're talking today about is your future. The transformation is about you. How do we give you a fighting chance to become your best self? The Ministry of Education has that responsibility. And so what you are hearing is the committee working with us, giving its impression of the work, challenging us, and also we give you a space to ask your question and to challenge us further so we can do better by you. That's the job.
The ministry says it will continue providing regular updates as the Education Transformation Program moves forward. For the news on PBCJ, I am Danita Rodney.
Thanks, Danita. The Yallahs market in St. Thomas has officially reopened following the completion of the first phase of major reconstruction works by the Ministry of Local Government and Community Development. Located in the heart of Yallahs Square, the upgraded facility now features structured vending spaces, improved lighting, and new sanitary amenities. Phase 2 of the project is expected to include additional stall construction outside the main building. Portfolio Minister Desmond McKenzie was on hand for the reopening.
Engagements are taking place now with some of the chicken vendors on the main. And this outside here is a reserve. Once the paving is done and the stalls put in, will be made available for them to come in. It's an ongoing discussion. So phase 2 will incorporate almost everybody that is vending in the town.
He adds that plans are being made for a new design for Morant Bay Market.
We are expecting that as soon as this design is completed, we have to assess whether or not having the market in the middle of the town makes sense.
St. Thomas Mayor Paul Lee says the event should be seen as more than a reopening.
We are opening doors to new opportunities and better facilities for our citizens. The improved market space in our way is providing a more dignified and modern space for our vendors and shoppers alike.
The Yallahs Market is one of several projects aimed at improving conditions for vendors across Jamaica. March is recognized globally as International Women's Month. In this report, Marlon Samuels puts the spotlight on Ena Woodstock, a trailblazer who served her country in war and broke barriers in Jamaica's justice system.
Born in 1917 in Spanish Town, Ena Woodstock attended Central Branch Primary School and St. Hugh's High School. She answered Jamaica's call to serve during World War II. She survived a torpedo attack, became the UK's first black female radar operator, and helped defend Europe from enemy craft. After the war, she returned home to make history. In 1950, she became Jamaica's first female court clerk. In 1951, she married civil servant Woodstock. In 1953, she was appointed Jamaica's first female crown solicitor and resident magistrate. Her leadership extended beyond the courtroom. She was involved in several organizations, including the Girl Guides. Recently, we here at the PBCJ had the honor of speaking with her daughters, who visited our offices to view an exhibition of their mother's remarkable life. How did your mother inspire you in your life?
She's inspired every aspect of my life. Professionally, in terms of getting into law, she's inspired me to think without limitations, the importance of giving back to the community, to the importance of family, of travel. She's been an amazing inspiration and role model for me and for the family.
What do you think people should remember most about her?
I think the idea that nothing is impossible. I often tell my students that if you work hard, you play hard. And I think that was Mom's mantra. She worked hard She was always prepared, and but she loved to entertain. As I said, she loved travel, and I often remind students, my students, I was a teacher, that you have to be prepared. You never know what happens. She didn't plan to go into law, but because she applied herself and was always ready, she was able to enter law school, which she didn't have in mind at the beginning. So just being prepared, taking advantage of every opportunity that you get is what I would hope people remember.
She was a trailblazer who served her country in war and broke barriers in Jamaica's justice system. Ena Woodstock passed away in December 2025 at the age of 108. Her legacy of courage, resilience, and trailblazing continues to inspire generations. Reporting for the news on PBCJ, I am Marlon Samuels.
In this week's Living Healthy report, we take a look at the Pan American Health Organization's Smart Health Impact, highlighting two major innovations transforming healthcare delivery in Trinidad and Tobago. The introduction of the Perinatal Information System, which is improving maternal and newborn care through better data and clinical decision, and the use of disinfecting robots to strengthen infection prevention and enhance safety for healthcare workers. The initiatives were implemented through a partnership between PAHO and the World Health Organization and the Ministry of Health.
It's way more precise in terms of making diagnosis and early treatment of conditions or complications that might come up with these pregnant women.
Which means a better outcome for mommy and baby, because you're able now to plan, look, this patient has had 5 pregnancies, we need to send her to specialist clinic, or this patient has a history of high blood pressure in pregnancy. At a glance, you see all of that.
One click and you get everything. It's pretty awesome actually, and it helps a lot with our productivity and quality of care that we give here.
A patient who has had her entire antenatal care at one facility, if she shows up at this hospital in labor, we are now able to access that patient's records and obtain relevant information to ensure that she has a safe delivery and safe aftercare. So it is an excellent program. It is free, and it really has helped to decrease our perinatal, maternal, and neonatal morbidity and mortality.
It gives me great reassurance, because after having babies, anything could turn left within the first year. So it makes you feel very comfortable that, okay, if something is wrong, I could always refer to that part of it to get the necessary information to fix the problem. So it's a very comfortable feeling.
Another technological innovation that's raising comfort levels at hospitals in Trinidad and Tobago are health service robots. Under a project titled Bringing High and Low Technology, funded by the India United Nations Development Partnership Fund, 8 health service robots were given to the Ministry of Health.
I believe that this project is very unique and actually is one of a kind in, I would say, in the region, having supported Trinidad and Tobago with the procurement of these robots.
6 of the robots are humanoid health service robots, one of which greeted PAHO's Assistant Director, Dr. Rhonda Seeley-Thomas, during her visit to the Arima General Hospital. The other 2 robots focus exclusively on disinfecting critical spaces. One of these disinfecting robots has been winning over human hearts at the Scarborough General Hospital.
It's been a tremendous help, especially towards the health and safety of my staff, because in areas where we have stuff like tuberculosis, it has been able to reduce the risk or mitigate the risk for them when we are actually going to prepare these areas to accept other patients. My staff love it with all the heart. As a matter of fact, she has a name, we call her Roberta. So she's now family.
Initial staff concerns about job losses have given way to a human-robot collaboration as employees recognize their value as a high-performance asset and complementary support that benefits everyone.
When you go into a room with a patient that has TB, even though you clean that room or you sanitize that room has to be aired for at least 12 hours before it's occupied. So you actually have a clinical area that is down. Upon using the robot, that room could be occupied almost immediately, within 5 to 10 minutes of completion of the sanitation process.
The disinfecting robots use ultraviolet light to eliminate bacteria and viruses.
She has a sensor that will sense the room, the size of the room. It will tell us what time it will take to do the treatment. It also does the intensity of the light, right, that would be needed to actually sanitize that area. We are 100% sure that does all the necessary calculations that is needed for any space, whether it be a small space, a large space.
From health service robots to smarter maternal and child health care to digital antenatal records, Trinidad and Tobago is embracing the future of health. With the support of PAHO WHO and partners, we are building a system of smart health that is future ready.
We are setting an example for what medicine in 2025 and beyond can look like and should look like, because the world is digital and we basically have to keep up.
Digital health is for everyone. A healthier, more resilient Trinidad and Tobago.
Time now for the business report with Denise Williams.
Welcome to today's business report. I'm Denise Williams, bringing you the developments shaping markets, capital access, and business decision making across Jamaica and the region. Let's get into the stories that matter. The Bank of Jamaica has announced that 5 bids totaling $3 billion Jamaican dollars were submitted by financial institutions seeking liquidity support on Monday. However, the central bank told RJR News that it allocated just $1 billion at an average interest rate of 5.87% per annum. The central bank provides short-term cash support to institutions through repurchase agreements, also known as repos. These arrangements involve the sale of a financial instrument with an agreement to repurchase it at a higher price at a later date. Importers sought a total of $73.5 million to settle overseas payments. However, the Bank of Jamaica intervened in the foreign exchange market on Monday morning, selling $30 million to authorized dealers. The shortfall comes against the backdrop of a widening trade deficit, which reached $5.3 billion during the first 11 months of last year. Among the institutions purchasing US dollars was National Commercial Bank, CIBC First Caribbean International Bank, and JMMB Bank Limited, each acquiring $6 million. For the trading period of March 30, 2026, the most actively traded securities were Sagicor Select Funds Limited Financial with 6,306,079 units, representing 17.56% of market sales activities. Kintyre Holdings Jamaica Limited with 4,886,841 units, representing 13.61% of market sales activities. Trans Jamaica Highway Limited with 2,616,423 units, representing 7.29% of market sales activities. Investor activity remained concentrated in finance, conglomerate, and transportation plays, signaling continued interest in dividend-producing and strategic assets. Turning to the foreign exchange market based on Bank of Jamaica data for March 30, 2026, Forex traders recorded significant activity with strong demand across major currencies. For the US dollar, trading margins reflected steady liquidity, with the US selling at $158.62 and buying at $157.27. For the Canadian dollar, moderate gains supported by $6.71 transaction spreads. The Canadian dollar sold for $109.24 and was bought for $115.95. For the British pound, continued volatility offered short-term trading opportunities of $7.33 in profits for the banks. The British pound sold for $205.25 and was bought for $212.58. These movements underscore the importance of cash flow timing and currency awareness for businesses managing import costs, debt servicing, or overseas exposure. For our credit report tip of the day, ignoring your credit report while building a debt portfolio doesn't create immediate consequences. It can create problems across your 20s, 30s, and 40s that become even bigger in your 50s. A lack of awareness around structuring credit often results in borrowing decisions that are disconnected from any long-term financial strategy. This often leads to scattered mix of debts, credit cards, personal loans, and consumer financing that do not work together toward a defined financial objective. A profitable debt portfolio requires intentionality. So you're gonna borrow with income growth in mind. You're gonna acquire assets, and these assets lead to cash flow generation. Without structure, debt becomes a burden. With a strategy, debt becomes a tool. In our funded and focused feature, securing business growth financing requires a clear and compelling funding narrative. When you sit down with your banker, you must articulate exactly how the funds will be used and how they will generate returns. Be specific. Is it expansion, equipment, working capital, or acquisition? Then connect each use to revenue growth or cost efficiency. Bankers think in terms of risk and repayment, so your story must translate into predictable cash flow. If you cannot clearly explain how the loan strengthens your business, the banker cannot justify approving it. And that's today's business report. I'm Denise Williams, bringing clarity to capital, markets, and strategy. Until next time, stay informed, stay intentional, and keep building forward. See you soon.
In regional news, the Caribbean is being urged to move faster into franchising, with Shauna Rollins, Managing Director of Delicious Treats, calling for franchises to be treated as export products after the summit in St. Lucia. Speaking with CBC News, she praised the growing government and international support for the sector.
Our immediate focus is therefore on helping entrepreneurs prepare for franchising across the region as well as globally. This will include working with regional business services organizations, MSME, financing agencies as well, grant funding, and traditional lenders to deliver capacity building workshops designed to identify existing and new businesses with an interest in or potential for franchising. And I want to thank the government of Barbados for sending some delegates to the summit as well. We had a really good time together, and I'm glad that our government sees franchising as another model that we can use to scale their businesses regionally and globally as well, because the more entrepreneurs we get exporting, the better for our countries as well.
Cuba's energy crisis may be easing after a Russian tanker delivered 100,000 metric tons of crude oil to Havana, the first major shipment since tighter U.S. sanctions cut off key supplies and triggered widespread power outages.
After 3 months of acute blackouts, power and petrol rationing, the news of relief from Russia is spreading like wildfire throughout Cuba.
Thank God, now maybe our transportation will flow again. Thank God.
But Russian fuel won't reach the pumps right away. Russian rather than Cuban authorities announced the arrival of the Anatoly Kolodkin, a tanker that's carrying 750,000 barrels of crude to the port of Matanzas here in Cuba. It's enough, according to experts, for 15 days of badly needed fuel. But it first needs to be refined, and that could take up to 20 days. Cuba has been under a fuel blockade since early January, with President Donald Trump threatening to punish any country that violated it.
Russia, of course, believes it is our duty not to stand aside and to provide the necessary assistance to our Cuban friends. We are pleased that the shipment of petroleum products has already arrived.
There'd been speculation of a confrontation if the U.S. used force to stop the tanker. But as it approached Cuba, President Donald Trump made a surprise announcement of his own.
If a country wants to send some oil into Cuba right now, I have no problem with it. If other countries want to do it, it doesn't bother me much. It's not going to have an impact. Cuba's finished. They have a bad regime.
It's uncertain whether this means that Trump will ease or end his campaign to choke off fuel to Cuba. But what he has made clear is that he hasn't changed his mind about taking over the island after he's finished with Iran.
For now, the next good news could be the arrival of the Seahorse, another smaller Russian tanker that's bringing diesel to Cuba. For a country that's struggling to live day to day without fuel, every little drop helps. Lucia in Al Jazeera, Havana.
In sports, we highlight football. Jamaica's Reggae Boys will face the Democratic Republic of Congo this afternoon in the FIFA International Playoff Final in Mexico, with a coveted spot at the World Cup on the line. As head coach Rudolph Speed says, his team is embracing the underdog role and is ready to fight for qualification. He adds that everyone in Jamaica's camp understands the importance of today's match and are ready to give their best. It has been 52 years since the Congo qualified for a World Cup, and coach Sebastian Desbere says his players are excited. The winner of the match will compete in Group K at the World Cup, kicking off against Portugal in Houston on June 17, then Colombia in Guadalajara on June 23, and Uzbekistan in Atlanta on June 27. And that's the news on PBCJ. You can follow us on our social media platforms at PBC Jamaica. Thank you so much for watching, and remember, we are the People's Station.